the stream and it will continue.
Yeah, I haven't done it yet. That's
okay. Yeah. So is someone who can I give control of the admin control of the Zoom to spotlight? You are live on the prayer channel, but you're not live on YouTube. So he will pick up the stream from there, and that's when he'll start from. That's why he said that.
Yes. We have Sister Ryoke who is assisting us with the spotlight, but maybe I can get her to join. I don't know.
Pastor today.
I didn't want to talk because you're live. Well, go ahead, you're live.
Please manage that for the spotlighting for us.
So I tell you, you're live now.
Good morning, viewers. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start once again by apologizing for the technical difficulties we've been experiencing this morning. We promise that this seminar is going to be worth your while. Again, my name is Toye Olutoye Gansalo, and I am here as part of the Rafa Health and Fitness Ministry of Jesus House, DC. And our assignment today here is basically to come here and rub minds and enlighten and encourage one another in this current climate and the current situation in the world today. And so basically we're going to share some things here this morning, and we do have some wonderful speakers as well as some fantastic panelists that will be sharing their experiences and also their expertise with us this morning. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our very first speaker this morning, and that is Dr. Mercy Lugutera. Dr. Mercy is an adjunct professor of the Behavioral Sciences Department at the UMGC and is a social worker. She has over 15 years of experience working with children of diverse educational settings. Mercy has been instrumental in designing programs, performing assessments, creating individual service plans, and advocating for services that enhance the social and emotional well-being of children. Ladies and gentlemen, even as you listen to Dr. Lugutera this morning, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in our chat box. And please, we will make sure that we answer most of your questions. Those that we're not able to answer this morning, we will make sure that we forward or we answer even through information that we will provide at the end of this program. Again, thank you so much for your patience. We apologize for the delay. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I present Dr. Mercy Lugutera.
Right. Thank you so much. So I'm going to jump right into it. Thank you for your patience. And since we're talking about wellness, we're all just going to stay well and get the best out of this. So thank you for joining us. And first, we want to begin by defining wellness. So what exactly is wellness? Is it one thing? Is it a specific thing? Is it a lot of things together? What really is wellness? And when we look at wellness, the most, I would say, simple definition is a state of being in good health and an actively pursued goal. So it's a state of being in good health and it's something that is an actively pursued goal. Actively means that you cannot say that you have arrived at wellness and that's it. It means that wellness is a journey. It's something that you are intentional about. It's not one thing. It's a series of things over and over and over again. Because we know that a lot of us, or most of us, are born healthy, or we say we are born healthy. But as far as wellness, you cannot say you're born well in that sense, because you have to continue to work on it. The more you know about yourself, the more the chances that you get to discover things that give you life and things that take life away from you. Another thing to remember is that wellness is multi-dimensional. Some researchers will tell us that, you know, there are 7 dimensions, 12 dimensions, but for this presentation, we're going to narrow it down to just 3 major things. We know that as a human being, we consist of three parts: our body, our soul, and our spirit. So you have your spirit, you live in a body, and you have a soul. So we need to remember that when we're talking about wellness, all these components of our body also need to be well. One of the statements that I like very much is a statement made by one of the past presidents of the US, Abraham Lincoln, something to the effect where you can try to convince or deceive people most of the time, or some people all the time, but you cannot deceive all the people all the time. When you try to translate that principle into wellness, what he's saying is nothing is 100% of the time. So something can be 100%, maybe 90% of the time, 95%, but no one functions at 100% all the time. Whether you're a therapist, a psychiatrist, a social worker, a physician, a pediatrician, whichever way you go, no one is 100% all the time. So which is why wellness is something that is applicable to all of us, not just adults, not just kids, not just a newborn baby. Every living being on earth, wellness is applicable to you. So we begin to ask ourselves, why should I be well? What are some of the benefits of being well? Why should I even try to be well? The thing is, if you want to aspire to live your best life, wellness is integral to that goal that you have. If you don't strive to be well, chances are whatever is bothering you is going to spill over to others, not just to you. If you're not feeling well, you are going to, the way you're going to react, you're going to pass it on to others, and you're going to also impede other people's wellness. When you are not well, when life happens, you are less likely to be able to pull out of it. It's going to take a lot more effort for you to be able to recover from it. So these are just a few of the reasons why wellness is crucial for everybody. So you might have been well last year, might have been well yesterday, but today is a different day. So you want to begin to ask yourself lots of questions. How do I stay well? What do I look like? If wellness were a bank account, how does your wellness account look like? How resilient is your well-being? How resilient are your emotions? How resilient are you? How prepared are you? Do you have any reserves? So in trying to be well, one of the things that is very critical to do is to assess all the systems in your life. So assess things that you relate with, right? So for instance, you say your family, your work, school, all those important parts of your life. It's important to take a minute and to begin to assess which of these things give me life, which of these things make me stronger, which of these things feed my soul or feed my body or my spirit, which of these things are good for me, which of these things take life away from me. So just like a bank account, if you find that the withdrawals in your life or the things that take away energy from you, once they begin to exceed those things that give you energy, it's time to sit back and try to figure out how you can turn it around. Right? So you don't want to wait until your account is empty before you try to figure out what to do. You want to be able to make an intentional effort to be proactive and to say, this works for me, this doesn't work for me. We shared at the beginning that the wellness journey looks very different for everyone else. It is important to know what your risk factors are. Are you you always upset? What is making you upset? How far do you need to go to understand why you're upset? Are you upset because you're tired? Then you need to rest. Are you upset because there is some difficult conversation you must have that you postponed for a while? Then you need to find a way to have that conversation. Are you upset because you're not sure of what to do, which path to take next in life? Then it's time to sit down and to consider, what do I need? How can I be proactive about this? Because wellness comes to us in so many different ways. It's not just one thing. You have your spirit, you have your body, you have your soul. So for instance, we're looking at your body. How do I build my reserves for my body? Well, we know rest is important. We know your diet is important. And find other things also. For some people, they would say, when I go for a swim, I feel better. Some would say, when I get a pet, I feel better. Now, for me, if I go get a pet, it will stress me out because just the idea of caring for that pet will bring more stress to me. So I cannot follow someone else's pattern of wellness. I need to be true to myself and to realize those things that strengthen me, those things that naturally come to me, those things that I can excel at, things that I'm happy with, things that I feel content around, things that build me up. The things that build us up must always surpass the things that tear us down. And when we're talking about wellness, I know there's been a lot of talk about the pandemic, but we live in very interesting times where there is stuff happening beyond pandemic. And beyond that, life continues to happen. We are in September. No one knows what's going to happen in October, November. And for some people, it feels like this is plague season. There's Hurricane Sally, people have been affected by it. Who knows what's to come next? So if you're living in this interesting time, one of the things that you will need to do, one of the things that would help you to stay in a better position, it's not necessarily so many things. It's not a lot of things you possess. It's more your emotional core. How strong is your emotional core? What is your wellness journey looking like? How well are you? And it's not like something that is very easy to detect. Everyone's journey is different. And you need to be able to realize, okay, this is what I need to do to strengthen my core and to become a better person. If you're a person of faith, then it's time to, how do I pray? What do I meditate upon? What do I spend my time doing? If it's a matter of your body, how do I exercise? What do I need to do? Do I need to go for a walk? Is this what helps me? Do I need to sing? Do I need to rest? So many different things that go through your mind. But it's important to identify the things that build you up to make you well, because it's a journey, it's intentional, and it's something that you have to pursue for as long as you're living. And if you find that today you're not too well, you don't give up, you go back and say, well, what do I need to do next? For some people, they say that, I have some friends tell me, for them, they understand their personality. And so they realize that for them on a weekly basis, they need a little bit of space to themselves, a little bit of quiet time to themselves to just lay down and think and reflect. That is how they are energized. And I also have some friends who say, I need to be around people a little bit. That's how I get my energy. So it's important to know who you are, the core of you, the center, what makes you you, what makes you thrive, and to escalate those things, and to also try to minimize those things that take away from you. If it's a loss, sometimes we have certain things that happen to us that impact our wellness. You don't have control over it. The loss of a loved one, life happening, some of these things you don't have control. But if you have built your wellness core, when it happens, you are in a better position to address it and to work through it. If your wellness core is not developed, then the least thing that happens, you can easily find yourself on the other side. And we don't really want to go that way. We want to do all we can to stay as well as possible for as long as we need to. So next time you see someone going down the road, don't feel that because they are smiling or they're all put together, they are well. Everyone has a journey that they're going on. And so you need to own your journey, own your wellness, and be proactive about it. If you need to walk away from something, if it helps to walk away, you walk away. If it helps to minimize interaction with something, you do. If it helps to read books on how to be patient, how to be kind, how to be strong, all those good qualities that you desire, you can begin the prep work now, and that would impact your wellness, whether your body or your soul, your emotions, or even on the spiritual aspect as well. So there are a lot of things to consider. Another thing that I wanted to talk on is when we talk about wellness, sometimes in the conversation, we leave out children as well. So wellness is not just for us adults. Wellness transcends everything else. It goes to children. And we find that when it comes to young children, we sometimes as caregivers or parents, sometimes we are not cognizant of how the wellness of our children can be impacted. We live in very interesting times where our children are very technologically advanced, they're skilled, which is great, which is awesome, but it doesn't necessarily translate into emotional resilience. And so while they need to engage in technology and all of that, it is important for us also to create avenues for them to be able to develop their emotional core, because they will need those social skills. They will need that emotional wellness as they grow to be able to be successful individuals and adults and citizens of the world. So that is very crucial. Also, when we talk about wellness, we have to remember that for children, they listen with their eyes. I know that it sounds weird because we normally listen with our ears, but when it comes to children, when they are listening, they're using their eyes to listen. They're observing a lot of things. Sometimes you don't have to say much, but they can feel what is going on around them. So do take a moment on your wellness journey. If you have young kids or kids in general, you want to also include them in that journey to see how they are feeling, what they're thinking, what they're listening to, what they're picking up, because all of these things also impacts the wellness of children. So we need to be intentional about that. We want to be well together as a family, as a group, as a church, as individuals, whichever way we want to look at it. We want to know that wellness is possible. The people who have been through a lot of tragic situations, but they do get well. Sometimes wellness is beyond you. You might need to go see a specialist or a therapist or go through a long process depending on what your special situation is. And if that's what needs to happen, it is great to continue that path. That is your journey and you own your journey. If you don't need to go see a therapist, it's something that you can do on your own or you can do with a friend. Awesome, that's the way to go. But it is your wellness journey. It's something that you have to actively pursue. You have to remember that you will not be 100%, 100% of the time, but you can build yourself to the point where when things happen, you are not overwhelmed. You're not, decentralized. You're not disorganized to that extent. You still have something to hold on to. And whenever we think about wellness, you can liken it to something that is very relevant to you. A lot of us do not wait for our account to be in the red before we decide what to do. You try your best to make sure that there's something a little over, or you're being proactive about your finances or whatever it is that is important to you. Wellness should be at the forefront of a lot of things we do, especially in the times we live in. Wellness is no respecter of person, and being unwell also is no respecter of person. So we need to be cognizant of that. In conclusion, though, I want to say that there is a book out there that if you something that you really want to think about, if you want to consider reading, there is a book called The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. Very interesting title, but this is a compilation of lots of series of events, true life events that happened to children and they grew into adulthood and how they needed to get help. Sometimes some of the wellness issues that we have to deal with, we can be traced way back to when we were younger. And so in those situations, if you want to be well, you have to travel way back, identify that, and get the help you need to get to the place of wellness that you need to get to. Because everyone can get well, and wellness is crucial to everyone. I want to conclude with a scripture that we are all very familiar with, or I assume that a lot of people might be familiar with. 3 John 2, I wish above all things that you may prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. So if you look at it even from the standpoint of faith, your soul prospering is very important. Your emotions, your feelings, that prospering, in addition to being healthy and in addition to being to prospering materially, your soul, your emotions prospering is very crucial. I am sure that we probably know some people who have it all in terms of material possessions, but their soul is not prospering, and you can see the disconnect in that. Or you might have someone who is healthy from the body standpoint. They exercise a lot, but when it comes to their emotions, they are unwell. And so, like we said from the beginning, when you're talking about wellness, you want to cater to your body, you want to cater to your soul, you want to cater to your spirit, and you want to understand that it is actually God's desire for you to be well and to stay well. And so whatever we need to do to stay well, we should not feel bad about it or feel shy about it. Go all out for it, be proactive, do what you need to do, and build your emotional core so that you stand a better chance of making a positive impact and being all those things that you have been designed to achieve. So this is a brief presentation, and hope that it was helpful to you one way or the other. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lugutera. We appreciate that. And definitely thank you for the insight and letting us know that wellness is not only applicable to adults, but also to children. Now, I do have a few questions I would like to ask you, even in this time and this season we're in. And one of those questions is that how do we, and maybe you can give us tips this morning, how we can promote this wellness you're talking about with children, especially in this challenging times. Perhaps you have some suggestions for us on how we can promote this wellness, things that we, maybe one or two things, not the whole thing, but not everything, but one or two things that you can tell us that we can do to help to promote wellness in our children in this period, especially this COVID season.
Yeah, so thank you. So one of the things is we know that social interaction has been limited to some extent, although things have opened back up. There's a lot of caution, there's a lot of things going on. And so for our children, what we know is for young children, play is part of the work they do, right? Play is very critical. And so we have a situation where, yeah, they can play somewhat, but not in a way that they're used to. So at home, or wherever we are with them, it's important to create spaces and places for them to play. If it means bringing one or two person over who you feel is safe enough, then they can have that. If it means them being with them while they log in to have some time with their friends, it's important to do that. One of the things that is also therapeutic for children is when they have a gardening project. So if you have space for a garden or a little project with the earth, something that they can do, something that they can do on their own, then that is also very helpful to them. And also listening to them, just asking questions. How do you feel today? Tell me about your day. Being intentional about having those conversations. For children who have things that they like to do, maybe they like to draw or they like to dance, but they cannot go out to dance anymore, you can let them watch videos or do things centered around what you know that is really something that makes them happy, because you want them to have something that they own, something that they enjoy doing. The same way that you as an adult, you're looking for things that give you life, you want to translate that to children also, things that give them life. Your children, what works for them. Do they like to go on a walk? Do they like to ride on their bike? Do they like to talk to friends? Do they like to draw, dance? Let them dance silly at home. Let them play music, have fun, just, ease the environment for them, make it happy for them. And that goes a long way for children.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lugutera. I appreciate that. Now, what we're going to do at this time is I would like to introduce our second speaker of the morning, and then we will take more questions. Again, like we said, feel free to ask us any questions. No question is off limits. Ask us any questions on how to cope, not only in this season, but just how to stay well and how to manage ourselves. And I read somewhere this morning where someone said, wellness is strength. So I think that's also important, even looping into what Dr. Lugutera has discussed. So our next speaker is Mrs. Tony Fasha-Singh. Mrs. Tony Fasha-Singh, and she has a passion to empower others to discover and maximize their core abilities, which has led her to being a life coach, is what she is. And also a church disability ministry consultant, a mentor for mothers of children with special needs. She is a Master of Clinical Mental Health Counseling degree candidate, a certified youth mental health first aid USA instructor, a John Maxwell team certified speaker, trainer, parenting and family coach, and American Foundation for Suicide Prevention field advocate. Tony is the author of 5 books available on Amazon, and her programs include More Than a Phase, which provides mental health awareness, training, and education, and also Teen Covering. And this is a character development and leadership program for teenagers. Her training includes degrees, certificates, and professional licensure in business investment, real estate, theology, and mental health. She currently resides in Maryland with her husband and 3 children, one of whom has special needs. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you this morning, Mrs. Tony Fasha-Singh.
Good morning. At this time, I'll start by sharing my screen so we can go straight to the presentation. Thank you all for your patience, and for those who had to come back in, we really do appreciate this. Dr. Lugatera has done an awesome job talking to us about the importance of wellness, how it relates to us, spirit, soul, and body, and how to maintain our wellness. I want to come from the other side, how to return to wellness. So the first thing I want us to realize about wellness is we have to become very self-aware. That's the first thing. I'm sorry, there's a little loop in here. So the first thing we need to become is very self-aware. So I just want you to look at these questions, because a lot of times we go through life, especially now in the midst of the stress and all that's going on. A lot of us are in survival mode. It's starting to ease off a little because things are beginning to pick up. But for so long, for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, for some people, we've just been in survival mode, just trying to make it through the day, make it through the next day. So nobody has really been paying attention to what's going on the inside. We've not been really paying attention to ourselves. So there's some questions like we need to ask ourselves. We've been taught from when we were little kids that the response to "how are you" is fine. So whether we're feeling fine or not feeling fine, automatically we respond fine. But we need to ask ourselves more in-depth questions. Have you lost interest in activities you once enjoyed? Have you experienced any changes in appetite, changes in sleep patterns? How are you coping with the social distancing? I really don't like that word, social distancing. I prefer physical distancing, because we need to still remain socially connected. How is your child, if you have children, how's your child or your children, how are they dealing with social distancing? If I asked you, what do you feel right now? Do you feel angry? Do you feel anxious? Are you numb? Do you even know how you feel? So these are some of the things that we need to begin to do, because when we do that, when we become more self-aware, more conscious of our feelings, our emotions, like I tell my kids when they get angry, I ask them, why are you angry? Yes, you're angry, but we really need to sit down and think about it. You could be angry because you're tired. You've depleted all your physical and emotional strength. So you're just irritable. You could be angry because you're hurt and you don't know how to express that hurt, so it comes out in anger. You could be angry because you're actually upset about what's going on right there, right then. You could be angry because you're projecting an anger from something else on that present situation. So there are very many reasons why we can be angry. So we need to begin to learn to ask ourselves questions. Even whatever emotion, whatever we're going through, we need to pause and ask ourselves. Just the same way we go for regular physical checkups, we need to do a personal wellness check. We can do it on a quarterly basis, but right now with all that's going on, it's a good thing to do on a monthly basis. Dr. Lugatera shared a lot about things we can do to pay attention. We need to just take time, even if it's just to sit down 10 minutes, 15 minutes, decompress, go through your day. It's a good practice to have at night, especially if you find yourself, you wake up exhausted. So that means most likely through the night, your mind was racing. It's a good thing to, before you go to bed, the last 5 to 10 minutes, just sit down and go through your day. You might need to journal some things. You might need to give yourself it's like you're emptying yourself out so that the next day you can be filled up at the beginning, and by the end of the day, you empty it all out again. Then it's good to keep a log, especially when you find you're a little off balance and things are not just fitting right. Because when you keep a log and you go back and you read it, it helps you begin to recognize trends. Some of the symptoms of stress, a lot of times we don't pay attention to them, especially the body symptoms. There are people going to the ER because they have excruciating headaches, they have tight muscles, frequent infections, skin irritations, but they don't realize that that is a symptom of stress. Yes, we can treat the symptoms, we can make them go away or alleviate the symptoms, but until you deal with the root, it's like you have a tree and you cut off the trunk of the tree. If you do not pull it out from the roots, it's going to grow back. So we need to pay attention. We need to put things together, and journaling really helps us to keep track. In the mind, symptoms of stress, we have the impaired judgment. We have, it's hard to make decisions, or we make hasty decisions. We worry, we're indecisive. In the emotions, there's that loss of confidence. There's depression, there's apathy, anxiety, irritability. Those are all symptoms of stress. Then behaviorally, people become more restless. They more risky behavior, excessive. They drink more if they were drinking before. They smoke more if they were smoking before. There's a loss of appetite. There's a loss of sex drive. So there are a lot of things that a lot of times we just keep treating the symptoms, not realizing that they are actual symptoms of stress. And in this area too, I like to talk about us paying attention to the children around us. I remember, I think it was around April, it was either April or May, I spoke to someone and I asked how she was coping with the pandemic. It was like right there in the eye of the storm then. And she was like, oh, she was fine. And then I asked about her children, and she had a little one, a preschool, I think she was in first grade. So I asked about her first grade, and she was like, oh, she's fine. And I asked her, how do you know she's fine? And she said, I asked her, and she said she was fine. I now said, what did you ask? What was the question? She said, I asked, how are you doing? And her daughter responded, fine. I said, no. We've been conditioned to respond fine. I told her to ask more in-depth questions. And then later she came back and she was like, oh my God. I mean, she was like, thank you. So she spoke to her daughter, and she asked her some in-depth questions, and then she just asked her to write how she was feeling. And she said when her daughter gave it to her, the first thing she wrote was, I'm scared. I'm scared my mom will get the infection and die. So this was a child that had been telling her, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. But she had all these fears in her. She had that anxiety in her. But through that process, they were able to talk through some things, and she was able to help her. So we really need to pay attention to our kids. If you see your child is acting out of the norm, don't, a lot of times for teenagers, we tend to overlook them and we're like, oh, they're just being teenagers. Ask questions, don't assume, always ask questions. You see that they're withdrawing, or for the boys, you see that they're more aggressive. Just something as simple as depression, it presents different for male and female. Most females are the typical textbook withdrawal, loss of appetite, fatigue, just sleeping and all that. But for the males, a lot of them, it's aggression. So when you see an aggressive male, you will not think depression. You will think opposition. You will think all kinds of other things are going on. So we really need to pay attention to those around us, and we need to ask. Don't assume, don't just ask questions. There's some ways that we can relieve stress. A lot of them, Dr. Lugutera has spoken about as well. One of the main ones I really want us to talk about, especially in this climate, with what's going on globally with the pandemic and with all that's going on with the racial tension, we need to limit our exposure to news and social media. We really need to do that, because it's adding pressure, it's adding stress without us being aware of it. So we need to watch our kids. We need to make sure that we take regular breaks away from that. We need to do all the things that she talked about, all the going out, just going for a walk, going out in nature actually helps. And helping someone else is another way to relieve stress. Because when you help someone else, it gives you a good feeling. It releases feel-good hormones in you. So that improves your mood. Exercise helps. Eating right helps. Hydration, drink lots and lots of water. Just being dehydrated can give you a headache, and it can affect your mood. So there are steps we can take. And then I know it's really hard this time, especially for people that live alone and maybe their office hasn't yet opened up. They can't go back to work, or so they're still semi-isolated from friends and family. Make sure you stay connected by video. Make sure you, as much as possible, do a video call, get on Zoom, get on WhatsApp, get on FaceTime. Make sure you see people. You can, Netflix has this thing now that people from different places can watch the same movie. Each of you have your popcorn where you are, hang out together, be texting each other while the movie is going on. Do things that will keep you connected as much as possible. Be positive, slow down, take breaks, rest, schedule rest into your day. Even Jesus rested. We see times in the scripture where it will say he withdrew from the crowd. He needed to go recharge. He needed to go decompress. So we need to be able to do that. Don't feel guilty about taking time off. There's sometimes I tell my kids, because I've gotten to the place I know that the next thing out of my mouth, I'm going to have to repent. I just tell them, I'm going to take a nap. And I just shut everything down. I take a nap. And by the time I wake up, I feel refreshed. So we need to pay attention to ourselves and do things like that. And we need to also be gracious with ourselves and be patient with ourselves. And we need to be patient with everyone around us. Especially, I want to talk about the youth again, because a lot of them, they are suffering loss as well during this period. You might be like, oh, what? They have their needs are being met. They're not out on the streets or anything, but just the change in schedule for them, because one of the things that children really need is structure. So for a lot of them, they're floundering. They're finding it hard. That some of them are doing better than others, but there's some of them that they're really, really struggling. So we need to be patient with them. They've suffered the loss of all the things they had, all their after school activities, all the hanging out with their friends. Just going to school alone is a social, it was a social thing for them. All the interaction with the teachers, with the school staff, just being on the school bus, being with other children. So all that is gone. And it wasn't a gradual thing. It was just cut off unexpectedly. So a lot of them haven't fully adjusted. So let's be a little more patient. Let them get away with some things. Let's not be hard on them. They're struggling too, just as we, the adults, are struggling. So let's be patient with our spouses. Let's be patient with everyone around us. And let's be patient with ourselves. Let's stop comparing ourselves with others. There are people that during this pandemic, they've learned 3 languages, taken 5 courses, gotten 6 certifications. If you just made it through today, that is something worthy of celebration. So don't drag yourself down. Don't look down on yourself. Don't talk down to yourself. Just be thankful for where you are and be thankful that you're still here. So we need to stop, because a lot of people are comparing, and that's where a lot of the pressure, in addition to all that's going on, is coming from. So now we need to also know when to seek help. There comes a time where, beyond all these steps you're taking, being self-aware, trying to mitigate the effects of all the stressors around us, there comes a time to seek help. It's always best to start with primary care. For the adults, your primary care; for your children, the pediatrician. That should be your first line of defense, because a lot of times there are certain things. For the past 3 years now, every time I've taken my kids for their annual, they've had a questionnaire about their emotions, their feelings, their mental health. And I've really been thankful about that. For the younger kids, they'll have the parent fill it out. For like the middle-aged kids, there'll be they'll have the parent and the child fill out. And then for the older ones, they just give it to the kids. So that way, the pediatrician, who is someone that sees them on an annual basis and for other things as well, is always the best line of defense because they've seen you over a period of time. So they can better assess if things are off kilter. So, and if it's a case of, they can now refer you. Most insurances will require a referral if you need to go to someone else. So they can refer you to the next step. They might, and if you already have a psychologist or a psychiatrist, then or therapist you're working with, notify them of any changes. Because a lot of people that already had a pre-existing condition, the current climate has exacerbated it. So they're needing more support, more help. There's nothing to be ashamed about. We all need help at different times. Like Dr. Lugutera said, nobody's 100% of the time. So today I might need help. Tomorrow you might need help. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And there's help out there. So we need to support one another. We need to be able to reach out. Now, in case of an emergency, if it becomes an emergency, if someone is talking about killing themselves or you feel like you want to, contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. They have people on there 24/7. You can reach out to, you can also reach out to the 211 Maryland. That can give you a referral, give you resources. There's the National Domestic Violence Hotline, the National Sexual Assault Hotline, Veterans Crisis Lines. So those first 5 ones are in case of an emergency. Now, if it's not emergent, if it's something that it's not right here, right now, then you can go to the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline. There's the Behavioral Health Treatment Services Locator. So those can help you try to find a psychologist, find a psychiatrist, just help you with more tips and ways that you can manage your wellness and manage the wellness of those around you. So these are some things, some numbers. Now this resource list, if you need this resource list, you can send an email to rafahealthjhdc@gmail.com. So that resource list can be sent to you. And you can also follow JHDC Rafa Health on Instagram at Rafa Health JHDC. So you need any of the resources, you need some help, you can always reach out to them. This is a resource we have in-house. So they can also give you better guidelines and better directions on things that you might need to do. Like then said, I have some books out there that might be relevant in this area, so you can check them out, and that's my information in case you need to reach out to me at any time. So at this time, I will hand it back to Mrs. Gonzalo.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Fashusin, for that wealth of knowledge. You've said several things here this morning, and we definitely appreciate that. And I know that, for one, I like the one where you said you don't like social distancing, that you like the word physical distancing. And I think that puts things in perspective, because we still need to be sociable, I guess, is what you're saying. And I definitely appreciate that. I know that as a child, I used to keep a diary, but now I think the fancy word is journaling, so, which is also great. So I guess with journaling, you can write in it like 10 times a day. But, you know, when I was growing up with the diary, you only wrote in it at the end of the day, and you had to write once a day. But with the journaling, you can write as many times as you want, which I think is fantastic. So definitely thank you for that. And I think another thing that I think is really important to know is that you saying recognizing trends, even as you as an adult change or see changes in yourselves, I think is really important. But I'm going to go a little deeper now, and I'm going to ask you a question with the current situation and what's going on in the world today. We have issues here where with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have people that have lost loved ones. And I'm going to throw it back to you now and ask you, from your little bit of exposure, or perhaps your great deal of exposure, can you tell us how to deal with children as they process loss of loved ones, even in the season?
Yeah. The first thing we need to do is realize the fact that they grieve too. Because a lot of times we tend to overlook children. Say for instance, like when my mother died last year, a lot of people rallied around and they were asking after me, they were coming around, but very few people paid attention to my children. But the fact is, they suffered a loss too. They lost their grandma. They had a relationship with her. So I remember when she passed, I actually notified the school. I notified the school psychologists in all their schools to please keep an eye on them in school. I notified their teachers so that they could pay attention to them. Because a lot of times when these children are grieving because they're either too young to be aware of what's going on with them, or even for the older ones, they really don't know how to process it, so they act out. So I didn't want a situation where one child will act out of character and then get in trouble without them realizing the stress they were under. So we need to acknowledge the fact that they grieve too, and we need to talk to them based on their age and level of understanding. We need to spend time with them and allow them, listen to them. Let them talk about it. Don't shut that down every time they bring it up. Let them talk about it. Let them cry. If they need to cry, because a lot of times we're like, oh, don't cry. Don't. Let them cry. It's healthy. It's therapeutic. Let them get it out. Be with them. Let them, remind them of the good times. Remind them of the things that will make them laugh, and check up on them on a regular basis. But the most important thing is listen, because a lot of times they come, it might not be a good time, and we shut them down. And it's right at that time they need us. We might go to them an hour after that. They've forgotten, but it will come up again. So it's best to right there, shut down everything, give them, if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, give them that time, listen. And based on what they say, then your response will help them. And remember, it's cyclical, it's not linear. So they might be good for a while. I mean, my mom died last year, May. I was somewhere like 2 weeks ago. I was listening to a song and I just started crying. You know, so it's not linear. So you just be patient with them.
Very well. Thank you so much for that. Now, at this time, ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to welcome everyone, those that are just joining us and those that have been online with us, even in this wellness seminar that I said, again, is being hosted by the Rafa Health and Fitness Ministry of Jesus House, DC. We have heard from our two speakers this morning, Dr. Mercy Lugutera, as well as Dr. in the making, Mrs. Toyi Fashose. Thank you so much for sharing great tips and giving us some insight on how to manage and cope. Now at this time, ladies and gentlemen, I do have some panelists as well that I would like to introduce to us this morning. They are also part of our team, and they come with a wealth of knowledge and will be helping us to shed some more light in how to manage and cope even this season. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our very first panelist this morning, Pastor Olumide Ogunjuigbe. Now, Pastor Olumide holds a doctorate degree in physical therapy and has been in clinical physical therapy practice for over 30 years. He also serves as the associate pastor for Jesus House, DC. And I want to say welcome to you, sir, this morning, and thank you for being with us. Our next panelist is Jumoke Faforam, also referred to as Moke, and that's what we're going to call her this morning. That's what her fans and her friends call her. She is a nurse, and her specialty is in geriatrics and wound care. She is going to help us today in shedding some light in how we're coping, even how the elderly are coping, even in this season. And also our last but not the least panelist is Miss Latunde Onobajo. She holds a master's degree in public health, and she has more than 15 years experience in the healthcare field, most of which is focused on providing mental health services to adults and individuals in healthcare, and also as a coordinator and case manager. She has a personal experience that she will also share with us this morning, which also is due to an acute mental health breakdown that she experienced and has led her to being an author of a Bible journal. And that Bible journal is called Blessed Performance. And as part of her recovery and healing process, through this, she also has a blog called Lavender Me, and you can find that on lavenderme.com. And she seeks to empower women, especially moms with young children, on the journey of life and motherhood. And by the way, when she's not writing, she makes the best hibiscus drink, and you can ask us offside about that. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this discussion this morning. We're glad to have all of you here. And again, thank you for your patience and bearing with us through our technical difficulties. So I would like to ask the very first question of the panelists, and including our speakers. I would like to ask Pastor Olumide. I think this is an appropriate question for you. We know that wellness is important, but perhaps you could shed some light for us this morning. Why, I guess we should say, why do bad things happen to good people? I guess is my question. So Pastor Olumide, my question to you this morning is, how come sick, and even how come children, or how come people that supposedly know the Lord, how come they're sick and even die of these sicknesses in the midst of all this going on? Maybe you can help us shed some light this morning.
Thank you very much, Sister Toye. And good morning also once again to everybody online. Sorry for the little hitch that we had at the onset of this program, but thank you for your patience. Thank you for that question, Sister Toye. One of the scriptures that have been shared earlier today is the 3rd John 2, that talks about the fact that God's desires for us, his children, is to prosper, to be in good health, and for her soul to prosper as well. You know, that points us back to the original intent of God, that when God created man, the plan and purpose of God for us is to live eternally. We were not created to be sick or to die. But when sin came into the sin, through the sin of Adam and Eve, it defiles us. And when I say sin, what do I mean by sin? Sin simply means doing something contrary to the word or to the plan of God. So sin brings about all these pathologies, sin brings about sickness, sin brings about all this. And sin also separated us from God, you know, in terms of the spiritual aspect, knowing fully well that we serve a holy God whose eyes are too holy to beneath iniquity. So when we sin, it separated us from God. And when we sin, it brought sickness and pathology into the world, which derailed the original plan that we should live eternally. So that's when men became terminal being, that we live for a certain number of years and we die. So that being said, on the spiritual aspect, God wanted to reconcile us back unto himself. And that's why he gave us Jesus Christ to come and die for our sin. And that reconciled us back unto him. And the same way in which pathology came, you know, when God created us originally, God created us so that all our organs and everything will function well. Man can be likened to, the relationship of man to God can be likened to a manufacturer of an automobile who designed the automobile and says, you know what, this automobile will function on gasoline. And for this automobile to fulfill its responsibility and duties, you fuel it with automobile. You maintain the oil change. You do the transmission change every certain number of time. The same pattern is what God has set aside for us. And in that, God has given us his word. Just like those things we put in the owner's manual, God has given us the instruction also in his manual, which is his word. For example, he told us, he says, behold, how pleasant it is when brethren dwell together in unity. Which means when you dwell together in unity, you support one another. You rub minds together. My weakness can be augmented by somebody else's strength. When I'm going through, I open up, I relate to you. That's the way God has created us. God created us to be relational being. That's how we function well. But when we live contrary to that, somebody can say, well, you know what? I'm an introvert. I don't like to mix with people. And then they go through challenges. Instead of them expressing themselves to other people based on the kind of trend that has been shared with the speakers this morning, then they bottle those things internally. They want to handle it. That is the beginning of depression. And that's how it comes in. So which means when you live contrary to what God had said, it brings sin to you. It affects the way you function. It says, be anxious for nothing, which means fear should not be in you. Anxiety should not be in you. And he has provided the outlets. So if you live contrary to that, sin is sinful. Disease will come in. He says, do everything in moderation. You know, that's what his word tells us. It says, do everything in moderation. So he says, do everything in moderation. And the same God says, he giveth his beloved sleep. So if he says, do everything in moderation, and I say, because I can afford it to eat 5, 6 chickens, whole chicken at one time, I'm going out of moderation. It's going to bring sickness, it's going to bring pathology into my life. If I can say, yes, I can, I need money, and then I can work 3 shift job, instead of doing my regular 8 hours, and bring 16, 18 hours of work a day. That is contrary to his word. That's why sickness will come in. That's why you find stress will come in, high blood pressure will come in, all this pathology will come in. It talks about it in his word. It says, a little exercise profited the body. But some people feel, well, because I'm affluent, I can hire people to do everything for me. They sit back, they don't exercise. Some people don't even see the sunlight, which is beneficial to our body. So what I'm trying to say is that our disobedience brings all these things to us. So God has his own plan and his own way. Yes, because God knows that these things are there, this pathology are there, and that's why he has given us the wisdom also. He has given us the wisdom to bring resources that will bring resolution to all these issues when we are sick. That's why he has given us. For example, God never made chair for us. He gave us the tree, but he gave us the wisdom to bring chair out of the tree. He never gave us the orange juice. He created the orange, but the wisdom he has given us to be able to get the juice out of it. Likewise, God has provided all this medicine that we talk about. In terms of medicine, in terms of the counseling, in terms of the surgery, in terms of organ transplant and all these things, the way of redemption, God has made available for us. He has given us the wisdom. So maybe at this point in time, let me traject it here and say that seeking medical help is not contrary to people of faith. Many times we feel because I'm a believer, then it's contrary for me to seek medical help. God is the one who has given the doctors, the psychologists, everybody the wisdom that they need. And the help can come in terms of preventive measures like the speakers have highlighted today. So those things God has put in place. God has put the spiritual aspect in place. So we've got to extend our faith into God to be able to say, I can pray. God can answer and heal me spiritually. He's done it before, he's doing it now, and he will continuously do it. Now back to that question. That doesn't mean all pathology will be healed, which is in line with what you asked me. I believe God can heal us miraculously. God can use the wisdom of the physician to heal us. God can use counseling to heal us. But will all pathology be healed? The answer to that is no. But does that mean that God is slack in his word? No. Does that mean that God is weak? No. Does that mean that God cannot solve some problem? No. Bible says, as for God, his ways are perfect. Some pathology may not be healed on this end of eternity. But the truth of the matter is that whether it's sickness that takes somebody away from here, look at it from those of us who are people of faith. We read about Elisha. Did how many miracles? 32 or 30 something miracles can be recorded to him. But he himself died of a sickness. That even after death, when they were going to bury him, his dead bone came in contact with a dead body and resurrected that person. So that shows us the sovereignty of God that we live. Some pathology may not be healed on this side of eternity, but we're going to a place where there will not be any sickness, no more pain, no more agony. And when we meet with him at that point in time, he'll be able to express his mind to us. So not to take too much of our time, I believe I've been able to put some light into that question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pastor Lumide. Thank you for that for answering our question. Now, I am going to digress a little because it's important that we know that we do have, even if they're not currently living with us, we do have the elderly amongst us, either in our churches or living with us in our homes or staying in their individual apartments at this time. And I would like to, and some of them are also either in group homes or in long-term care facilities or some assisted living facilities. So at this time, I would like to ask Moke to please give us some insight on how the elderly have been coping, even in this current climate with the pandemic, and also with perhaps them not being able to see their loved ones that they're used to them coming to visit. So over to you, Moke. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Toy, for that question. As a nurse and as a geriatric nurse, throughout this pandemic, it has been quite tedious. First of all, the first thing I realized, for some reason, that the people who ever came down with the COVID-19 saw it as a stigma. And a lot of people were not willing to talk about it. In the facility that I work, being that I work with the elderly, I was privileged to see a lot of people go through it. A lot of people survived it. And it was quite a real tedious time for me as a nurse. The elderly, a lot of them deal with the diseases just the same way the young people deal with it. What takes them out of the norm really is the fact that they have underlying issues, a lot of underlying issues, either be high blood pressure, diabetes, hyperlipidemia, other things going on. A lot of them have respiratory issues. So with this COVID coming in, just did a double take on them. What we were able to do and how we were able to push through all of this, especially with the elderly, is that we try to make sure that a lot of them, that their medications were up to date. We try to do a lot of things with physical therapy. As Pastor Olumide said, and I'm going to go and take a leaf from that, you know, when he says we come together, iron sharpeneth iron, we don't live according to the word of how God has created us for us to live it, then you know you're living out of what God entails for you. Bringing it back to the elderly, what I saw was in the unit that I generally manage was that with the COVID coming in, a lot of these elderly people, we had to put them into isolation. Now, putting them into isolation did not only do no justice, but made things worse. What did I mean by that? We saw that even the elderly came down with depression. They started to lose weight. They won't eat because they had their own routine. They had a way of interacting with each other. And now we had isolated them. It was really, really difficult. Bringing this home, me as a nurse having to deal with this, if not for the strong background that I have in the Lord and standing on the word, could even actually take you down as a nurse, dealing with this on a daily basis, seeing what people were going through, seeing how the elderly were having to struggle to cope. Really, it was mentally taxing, even on me, having to go as a frontliner every day to deal with these issues. And to the best of our ability, as our facility could do, we had to start doing one-on-one with both nurses, with psych, you know, to get them to whereby we don't totally lose them as the elderly. Did we lose some? Yes, we did. And we found out that it wasn't actually more so the COVID that took them out, but the place where they were now at. We're talking about separating people from their families. These are people that see their families maybe once or twice a week, but now there was no contact whatsoever. And based off of that, a lot of them, they went into depression, and some of them never really came back from there. And a lot of them, you know, we had to start doing things mentally with them to be able to keep them and, you know, to move them to another space. So that's pretty much, you know, how it truly affected a lot of the elderly in terms of what I visualized and I saw.
Thank you very much, Sister Moke. I think at this point is just as a reminder for us all to stay in touch with our elderly. I know that, like I said, some of them live in senior citizen centers, and some of them are in assisted living centers, and some in the nursing homes. And I know that each of these facilities have stringent rules and do's and don'ts as far as what they will allow or what they will not allow as far as visitation is concerned. But we must all do our part because like Sister Moke has said, we have people who do not have a history of depression that are now taking on these new diagnoses of depression just from being in isolation from their loved ones. Now, I would like to, at this point, bring it a little closer to home by speaking with one of our panelists this morning, because part of the concern here, which we're trying to create awareness for in this holistic approach to life and wellness, is talking about the stigma that is associated with being unwell, even if it's temporary. So at this time, I would like to ask our very own MPH in the house, Latunde, to please talk to us a little bit about your journey and your experience, if you've had any experience with stigma. And I know that one of the concerns is, you know, people say, if I tell somebody I have some form of mental unwellness or mental illness, does that mean I'll never get a job? Does that mean I'll never be able to apply for certain jobs? Will people look at me differently because I have this diagnosis on my record? How much of my medical record can I share with people? And so we definitely appreciate the fact that we have Sister Latunde in the house this morning. And I know that she will be able to shed some light because she'll be able to speak personally on this. And so please, without further ado, Sister Latunde, talk to us a little bit about your journey and your experience, and how, and if you can answer some of those questions for us with regards to whether or not you've experienced difficulties in getting a job or getting employment by revealing a portion of your medical history. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Sister Toye, and thank you to all the panelists who have done an amazing job. And I want to thank everyone who's watching for even being here, you know, joining us live. So my personal experience with mental health, wellness, I want to say, you know, started maybe 13 years ago. But of course, I didn't recognize it then. I grew up in Nigeria, and like Sister Toyin was saying earlier, that we've been conditioned to just, when people ask you, how are you doing? You just say, I'm fine. That's just it. But I remember my first experience was shortly after undergrad. I graduated, 2007. And it was hard to find a job. And as a young person in America, taking care of having some responsibilities with families here and families in Nigeria, financial responsibilities, I mean, the pressure started to mount up, you know, not able to get a good job. You know, I graduated fairly with a good GPA and not being able to get a job, and just that started to mount. And I remember my first suicidal attempt, was I believe June of 2007. And I just thought, I don't know, life is hard. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to end it all up and, end up and just, not be a burden to other people. And people are expecting me to be able to do something and I'm not able to do it. And of course, I didn't recognize what that was. I didn't know it was mental illness and whatnot. But by God's grace, I was a Christian at the time. By God's grace, I prayed and I just pushed through and got a job, and I was able to move on with life and whatnot. Now, fast forward to about 10 years later. About 10 years later, I had gotten married. I was kind of on the trajectory to life, and everything was going to be rosy and wonderful. And then I had gotten married. I had my first child, but then I noticed that I started having some physical symptoms that were not present, that I had not experienced in the past. I was falling a lot. And just to kind of fast forward, I realized that it was due to a medical condition that I had when I was a younger child and I didn't even know. And so I was having a recurrence of symptoms, but the recurrence of the symptoms were impacting my life so much so that I could not function as a mother. I'm a mother of 2 young children. I couldn't function very well. I'm a wife. I couldn't function as a wife to my optimal, so to speak. And when I mean that, function as a mom was I couldn't be present emotionally, completely be present for my children. So I was always physically exhausted. I was always falling down. I was irritable. There was a lot of pain in my body. I just didn't know where. But one thing that I'm grateful to God for, that I told myself I had to do, was to talk to my primary care doctor. And so we started this journey of figuring out what's going on with my body. Why was my body starting to fail me? Eventually we were able to find a specialist who then gave the accurate diagnosis, and being able to get the right diagnosis kind of led to that, oh, this is what's going on. This is why this is happening. But I always tell people that if I had not opened up to my primary care doctor to say, something is not right somewhere. It started as a physical illness. I'm falling. Why am I falling? For anyone who knows me, I used to love to wear high heels. And then I noticed that after I had my baby, my first child, I couldn't wear my high heels anymore. I could wear my stilettos and I couldn't wear them anymore. And I was wondering, why is this? Why am I walking down the street and falling down? I say all that to say that when I said that to my primary care doctor, we thought it was neurological. Of course, it wasn't neurological, but we figured out what it was, and being able to get the right treatment and being able to talk with the right doctor kind of started that journey of recovery, the journey of wellness. I am still on that journey. I'm still on recovery. I'm still on wellness path. But one thing that I know is I am no longer, things are not the same. So I think Dr. Lugutera said, alluded to it earlier that, wellness, I think it was Mrs. Fashion, I'm sorry. It's not a linear process. It's cyclical, So once you figure it out, once you talk to your doctor and you guys figure out, oh, this is what's going on, doesn't mean that everything disappears and then you can go back to your life as it used to be. And I always also tell people with COVID, and I'm sure a lot of people know this, with COVID, we're not sure what's going to happen in the future. A lot of people are saying, it's not good. Things are not going to return to normal. But even if things don't return to the normals in the past, we can find a new norm. We can find a new way to live life to the fullest. And so for me, yes, I have a physical, a mental, I had a mental health condition. I have a physical health condition that has now given me the opportunity to rephrase, to reframe, to reassess how my wellness journey, how I'm going to continue this life. So I may not be, I'm never going to be able to wear high heels. I'm never going to be able to wear certain type of shoes, but I know that I can still wear shoes. I can still feel a certain level of comfort while still being socially connected, while living my fullest life. It's not going to be what it used to be, but I know that I am on that path of recovery where I'm finding new ways to do things, you know. I'm able to relate with my children better because now I know what was causing me to have body pains, what was causing me to fall, what was causing me to be irritable, you know, what was causing me to be so fatigued that I had to go to bed at 6:30 in the evening and I could barely prepare dinner for my children. So now, because I spoke to my doctor, and whilst, you know, part of talking to my doctor was going to therapy, seeing a psychiatrist, trying to exercise. I can't even exercise as I used to, but finding different ways to still live life to the fullest. And even, and I always say, I thank God that I was able to get that diagnosis, because what it helped me was to step back a little bit, and reassess my life as a whole. So as a mother, as a wife, as a career woman, as someone, as an entrepreneur, to really be able to assess my life and say, can I still do A, B, C, and Z, or can I focus on A and B for now, and then think about how to add Z and Y on the longer run. So that's my personal experience, in the sense that, yes, I had a mental health, and I had an acute mental health issue, a condition. But talking with my doctor, along with prayer, along with medication, along with peer support, has helped me to get back on the right track of wellness. You know, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm now 100%, but I know that I'm on the path. I'm on the journey to recovery, and I'm much, much, much better than I was 10, almost 12 months ago. So that's my personal experience.
Very well. Thank you very much, Mrs. Onabajo. I appreciate your openness, and I appreciate your being forthcoming with your experience and your health journey, health and wellness journey. Now, I will cut a little deeper even at this time by asking one of our speakers, Mrs. Fashosin, to please help us to shed some light, even as we've heard from Mrs. Onabajo this morning of her experience. I would like you to share with us this afternoon. And by the way, I do not want to take it for granted. We have about 100 guests even logged on YouTube this morning, and we do not take that for granted, because we know that there are different places you could choose to be on a Saturday morning, and we definitely appreciate your presence here. So without further ado, Mrs. Fascius, if you can please shed some light for us on how to perhaps handle or deal with children that show us, should I say, suicidal tendencies, or have suicidal ideations that maybe, I know that I have a question that was sent to me privately that said, what do you do if your child is cutting? Now, I need you to first of all start by telling our viewers what cutting means, and then perhaps direct us in what way to go, or what advice you would have for such a parent. Because, you know, we think that, and I mean, it was important that Mrs. Onabajo touched on the fact that she was already a Christian at the time when she was having these mental health struggles. And I don't think that it's necessarily just, I don't think it would be fair for us to say that because she's a Christian means that she can't have illness. But however, it is the fact that she has survived, and she's surviving, and she's here, and that's part of her testimony this morning, is her journey. I want us to know that just because it's happening to an adult doesn't mean that it doesn't happen with children. So I would appreciate if you can shed some light, Mrs. Fashosi, on this with regards to children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gonzalo. The first thing I'd like to say is, I know the Bible says we are not of the world, but we do live in the world. So we get impacted just like everyone else does. So yes, a Christian can have a mental illness. Just look in your Bible. David suffered with depression. Jonah suffered with depression. The prophet Elijah suffered with depression. Remember when he was running from Jezebel, and then he now told God, oh, I want to die. If he really wanted to die, all he had to do was wait for Jezebel. should have helped him out. So it was his depression speaking. So when you read through the Bible, you'll see that, yes, God used people that had mental illnesses. So that gives us hope that just because I have a mental illness does not mean I'm less than, or that God cannot use me. So we need to do away with that stigma. The brain is an organ like any other organ. Just like the liver can get sick, the brain can get sick. Now, to your question, there are actually two different things you're talking about. Cutting is not classified as being suicidal. Cutting comes under self-harm or self-injury. So there is self-injury, and then there's being suicidal. Now, for those that self-harm, they do things like they cut themselves. You might notice that there's a child that even in the heat of summer, sweating, always wearing long sleeved shirts. You want to check that out. Why are they always covering their wrists? Because a lot of times they cut at the wrists. There's the hair pulling. There's the picking of the skin. There's they bite it. There are different ways to self-harm. And a lot of times people that self-harm, especially a lot of children that self-harm are children that have gone through trauma, a lot of it abuse. Because when a child is being abused, anybody being abused, there's something about abuse that it's a loss of control. So in that area of the child's life, they cannot determine when the abuse will happen, the duration of the abuse, the severity of the abuse. So they've lost control in that area of their life, and they're trying to establish control in another area. So by harming themselves, yes, they're inflicting pain, but they are inflicting a different pain. So I can forget about this pain because I'm focused on this one. I have control. So it's all about control. And very rarely is someone who is self-harming suicidal. Their intent is not to die. Their intent is, it's almost like when you have a boil and it's really swollen. They have to lance it so you can get all the poison out. So that's basically what the person self-harming is trying to do. There's all this pressure, there's all this pain in me. I need to get it out another way. So then when we come to being suicidal, that's somebody who wants to end it all. I know a lot of times in our culture, when someone says they're suicidal, we brush it off. When a child comes and says, I'm depressed, you're like, you're not paying bills. You're not responsible for anything. What do you mean? All we ask you to do is read your books. What do you mean you're depressed? What are you doing? Depressed for what? But that child is actually expressing a valid concern. So we need to pay attention. We need to ask questions. We need to get them to train professionals that can help. So when a child comes and tells you, I want to kill myself, you have 5 questions you need to ask. Take it seriously. Don't just ignore it. Ask them, do you have a time? Do you have a place? Do you have a mode? Have you begun to gather any resources? Do you have a way? When their answers to any of these questions will determine how critical it is. If they answer yes to all the questions, then make sure they're never left alone until you can get them to help, because they'll just change the mode. They already want to do it. So even if they say they want to use guns and you take the guns away and you leave them unattended, they'll grab a knife, they'll grab whatever's next to them. So get them to help. Take them to the emergency room if they're having a meltdown. Make sure that they're under supervised care as soon as possible, so that they can be managed to get to a state where they can be able to withstand it. One of the things that the National Alliance on Mental Illness has found is that 9 out of 10 people that actually die by suicide. Now, we stay away from the word commit, because that's a carryover from when it was a crime. It was a criminal. It was a felony to attempt suicide. But so we don't use the word committed. We say they died by suicide or they killed themselves. So we found out that 9 out of 10 people that actually take that step have an underlying mental illness. Now, all of us go through pressure. All of us have had one time or the other that we've decided, you know what, I'm done. I can't handle this pain again. I think it'll be better if I just leave. But to actually take that step to go through it, they found out that 9 out of 10 people have an underlying mental illness, and most of them were not even aware. It's now in hindsight, going through all that they went through, that the medical professionals have now discovered that, yeah, there's really something else going on. So please, you have a child that's self-harming, get them help. You have a child that's suicidal, please get them help.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Fasherson, for that response, and we appreciate you. All we're saying basically today is that it is, and I believe Pastor Olumide also said the same thing, the fact that we're Christians does not mean that we should not get help. We should seek help, not only for ourselves, but for our partners, our loved ones, and especially our children. And the whole essence of this seminar this morning is to assist in removing the stigma where we think that mental illness is perhaps a death sentence or is only something that pertains to a certain group of people. It's important that we know that mental unwellness or illness can happen to anyone, and it's what you do to get what you do in that journey that makes you different from people that do not seek help. So the bottom line and what we're hearing today is that we should get help. And another thing I do want to say is that one of the questions that came up, which I would like to also ask, and maybe Sister Moke can assist us with this, is that what are the tips that you have, what are the things that you have developed now that as we're going into different phases as far as reopening some of these facilities for the elderly? How do we engage our elderly? And I do want to thank some of our elderly members that are and also friends and viewers that are on with us on the YouTube channel today. We appreciate you. But I do want to know from you, Sister Moke, how do we engage some of these elderly that are basically isolated, maybe not even in nursing homes, but in their own homes? How can you give us some tips on how we can keep them, keep in touch with them, or keep them social or sociable, so that they don't feel so isolated at this time, that they are not stuck at home, but safe at home?
Thank you for asking that question, Statoya, because it's really and truly very important. A lot of things that I found out that needed to happen with the elderly is that we needed people to still check on them. I'll give you a personal experience. My older sister, she's over 60, and she did come down with the COVID virus. At the time that she came in, she was coming back in from Lagos, Nigeria, and she had to have her own police. We had to put her in isolation. It was the most trying time for her. I remember several times over the course of a day, I would call her up and she'd be crying. I think the fear of the COVID wasn't so much of what her reason for crying really was, but for the fact that her children were here, her siblings were here, but nobody could come in physical contact with her. And she expressed that over and over and over again. And she expressed it to the extent that she said, so if anything happens to me today, that means that I'm literally going to die by myself, as in nobody being there. Because with the virus, it was like you couldn't come in contact with somebody who already had it. So what we started doing, even in my facility, and I started doing with my sister, was that we did video times. So what we started doing was that we now did video conferences with all the patients individually. The same thing I did with my sister, to give her, something to identify with. Because at this time, a phone call didn't suffice anymore. She needed to see someone. She needed to be able to see and feel that empathy and know that people were there for her. And that it wasn't that she was just being put in a place for isolation and just being left by herself. And that was something that we had to do even in my facility. I guess I was pretty much one of the first nurses to pick up on the fact that a lot of my patients were just boom, 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 losing weight. They were becoming very confused. So we had to start implementing things that would tax them. With the elderly in the nursing home, okay, they used to do physically bingo, so we had another medium of being able to do bingo with them, seeing someone. With my sister, we had to do one-on-one Bible study because she also is a Christian. We'll talk, we'll discuss. I had to bring her children in on board, where we would all do like a Zoom video chat so everybody could see everybody and just generally ask, so how are you? What's going on? And it was the same thing we did with the patients that I literally had to do with my sister, because again, it was just like a vicious cycle. Everything comes back to the fact that without doing this, they get depressed. It becomes a mental issue. And that was the only way forward to be able to get them to a better place.
Okay, thank you very much, Sister Moke. And I think it's only appropriate at this point because I know that we do have some members that have their parents, like I said earlier, either living with them or living in their own spaces, in their own apartments, and they have been forced to be kept apart even at this stay home safe period. So, and I think one of those people is one of our panelists actually, which is Pastor Lumide. So Pastor Lumide, I think I'm going to have you just add a few lines on this with regards to being apart from your loved one, even at this time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sister Toye. And thank you, Sister Moke, for that input as well. I just want to add as a writer to what Sister Moke said. You know, she spoke specifically mainly to the audience that she catered to. But we have also, especially in the church environment here, we have some of our elderlies also who are home or living with their children who have also affected by this. You know, let me state it here that living long is a blessing, but it comes with a price. You know, it's like you have an old car. It takes a lot of maintenance to keep them going. And one thing that readily comes with aging is that your immune system is affected. And that's why you find out that when the elderly is subjected to the same thing that a middle age or a younger person is exposed to, it affects them more in terms of additional to the fact that they can have some underlying pathology as well. Or having said that, the immune of the elderly is compromised. The immunity, the ability to fight the infection, bacteria, viral, fungi, you know, it's depleted. But one thing that we know physiologically that helps the elderly is exercise. When I'm talking about exercise, I'm not talking about anything rigorous. Just a simple act of muscle contraction, it helps to build up the immunity, especially in the elderly. So you find that the reason why most of them died, those in the nursing home, for those of us who track the Italian population, why you find that they were affected is because their immunity is already compromised. And then they are kept inactive. So it's a double whammy for them. So what I would suggest to our elderly is two things. Try to stay as active as possible. Yes, exercise, use those muscles, simple stretching, simple walking, get outside, get the regular sunshine, get the fresh air into yourself. You can still be in isolation by walking around your house, you know, do it 3-4 times. If you have staircase and you are still able to do staircase, do it multiple times. It helps to build up your immunity. And also try as much as possible to get back to your normal social connection as much as possible. There is something that the elderly group in our church recently did, which I'm so happy about. You know, my mom falls into that category too. I have an almost 80-year-old elderly woman that lives by herself. You know, what they did, they said, okay, church is, they mostly meet at church. It's always a rallying point for them. They always look forward to it. It's a way of socializing for them. But this has been taken away from them. So what the leadership did was that they sat together and they put together a kind of training where they can log into Zoom like we're doing, like what we're doing here now. So now they meet regularly on Zoom. I see my 80-year-old mom, she was telling me yesterday, asking me yesterday about this program. is it going to be on Zoom or is it going to be on YouTube? I said, sure, mommy. She said, what do you think? So, you understand what I'm trying to say? So she was asking me that, is it going to be on Zoom or is it going to be on YouTube? I said, what are you talking about? I said, what are you talking about? I've been doing this, So what I'm trying to say is that the leaders of that group have been able to educate them on socializing. Yes, they are still in their apartment, but they are still connecting with one another. My mom can video chat with my daughter in California now. So if we teach them, yes, they are not there, but they still can be connected with them. So it's like that aspect of their lives is not taken away from them. So please, exercising is very, very important. And a lot of this exercising group can also be done on the Zoom. They can all Zoom together and the instructor can sit the way Sister Toye is sitting and then, okay, repeat 10 times, let's go, and 1 and 2 and 3. And once they learn it, they can go back on their own and do it on a regular basis. So what you and I would take for granted in terms of exercising, it goes a long way for the elderly because it helps to build their immunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pastor O. And I do want to say to our viewers watching, that was definitely the physical therapy expertise angle of Pastor O coming into play there. So I know one of our viewers also mentioned that their mom has joined the YouTube exercise program, and that can be done right from your house or right from your homes. And like I said, I do want to acknowledge all our elders that have logged on to this program, even this morning, this afternoon. We do not take it for granted that everybody has taken time to join us on this Saturday for this. And I want you to know that with God's help, this is definitely not going to be the last you're going to hear of us with regards to keeping well and, keeping people aware and creating awareness of maintaining ultimate and absolute wellness, which is, again, as Dr. Lugatera had mentioned earlier, not just physically, but also mentally and spiritually. So I know that one of the questions, we do have lots of questions coming in, but I do want to direct a quick question to Dr. Lugatera, which is also with regards to teenagers. I know that some of our viewers have mentioned that they have teenagers that even pre-COVID were moody. So maybe you can help us shed some light on tips on not managing, but basically connecting with our moody teenagers, even in this season and even after this season. Perhaps you can give a couple of tips of what they can do, maybe 1 or 2 tips of what parents can do to be connected or to reconnect or perhaps initiate connection. Because again, like Mrs. Fasherson said earlier, in our culture is, I send you to school to go, I send you to go to school, you need to go to school, you need to do this, you need to do that. And it's whatever the parent says that pretty much goes. But unfortunately, everybody's forced to be in the same space now with the whole virtual learning and what have you. So Dr. Lugatera, if you can quickly shed some light on how parents can deal with their teenagers, not just the moody ones, but teenagers at large.
So thank you for that. So as regarding teenagers, I think when you look at even the developmental stages, being moody, quote unquote, is typical of the teenage years. That doesn't mean that it's okay for them to stay moody, but it is typical of the teenage years. And I think one of the things that could help is, first, I'll make a suggestion to parents. First, I think it's important to, there was something by Erik Erikson talking about developmental stages. And I think sometimes we as parents or guardians don't understand what teenagers go through. If you can understand it, then you're better prepared to know how to support them. If someone is moody, typically our parenting style also has to change. So you change from being a dictator or being, I said this, you must do it, to becoming more authoritative. It's important to build a dialogue, no matter how moody a child is. And it goes back to what a lot of us have said and what Ms. Fasosing also said. It's important to figure out for this particular child, why are they moody now? Have they always been moody? Is it a drastic change? Are we the ones reading too much into it? Why are they moody? And they can tell you, maybe they will not say the first time, but the second time they might. They're moody because maybe they feel they are not, maybe they are comparing themselves to someone else in school. They don't look exactly like someone, because we know that at this teenage period is where they are more self-aware. There's a lot of comparison. Sometimes people are being bullied. Sometimes people are going through abuse. And sometimes they're not fully understanding how their body is changing. They're very self-aware, body conscious. I don't look the way I want to look, and that can bring a lot of issues to them. But or maybe they're thinking, I'm not sure my parents want me to go this way in life. I don't want to go that way. I want to be something else. So it's important to understand why the child is moody in the first place. And based on that, you figure out what to do. Establish is a positive relationship, no matter how difficult it is. The teenage years are one of the critical moments in a child's life. They can either go the right way or the wrong way. And we have to find ways to continue to keep them engaged. If they've lost interest in something, we find a way for them to go back to that interest. If they want to talk, we want to listen to them. Sometimes they don't want to talk, and that's fine. That's a typical experience. But if they're ready to talk, we must be ready to listen and to make adjustments to our parenting styles as well. It's very important to do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Lugutera. Now, I do have a question that was sent by one of our viewers. As we very well know, in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic, we have some people who have been forced to stay home, either because of their medical history or because of just basically the financial instability of the companies for which they work. So some people have basically stopped working since March. And some people are currently not working and have not been working. So I would like to ask for Pastor Olumide Ogujigbe to please very quickly shed some light on that and maybe give us some tips on how people can cope even in this during this period, and maybe some encouragement on how people can hold on even as this season passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Toye, for that. And my heart goes to whoever individuals or whatever family is going through financial struggles during this period and during this time. I trust and I pray that God will turn that situation around for good in the mighty name of Jesus. You know, what you just said now, it's affected me as well. You know, the nature of what I do as a physical therapist who practices in the home care setting. We see geriatric population mainly at home, and a lot of them, because of the closure of the hospital, are not going into the hospital. A lot of them that have selective procedure have deferred it because of the fear of the fact that they do not want to contract COVID and whatever. And one way or the other, people don't, the lockdown, and people don't want you in their home anyway. So it bothers me as well. But, you know, what I'm going to say doesn't really apply to me because of, you know, I took a class about 20 years ago by Dave Ramsey called the Financial Peace University. And one of the takeaway from me then, which I've been practicing then for the past 20 years, is that for any individual, we must always have at least 6 months of financial cushion. You know, irrespective of where you are in your economic situation, when you're in this kind of society, in this kind of environment, you must always have at least 6 months of your bills saved up. But when this pandemic started, I never thought it was going to last this long. I thought probably just by April, May, one thing or 1 month or 2 months or whatever. So that cushion helped me through during this period. So let's put that aside. So shift away from it. But in this kind of environment, the question is, what do you have to get out of this situation? You can sit back. One thing I would like you to know is that your work is not your source. God is always our source. Every one of us should get to that point where you know that your income is just an avenue that God has set aside for you to bring in that revenue. And you will find out, just like he said in his word, that I will never leave you nor forsake you. That God will always leave a way for you to get out of it. So my question is, what do you have? You have the society that we live in. We live in an organized society. If you're a business owner, the government came up with what they call the SBA loan. If you're a business owner, you can apply for the SBA loan, and you can explore that. That can help you to cover the business end of that. Also, I will advise you to speak to, if you're a homeowner, you speak to your mortgage company. A lot of them came up with a plan that will help you to defer the mortgage. so that what you save up can be used for the immediate need of the family in terms of the feeding, in terms of, you know what I mean, rather than you spending a big chunk on the mortgage. So which means the mortgage can be deferred. Likewise, if you have credit card debt as well, because we know in the environment in which we live in, your credit really matters. Speak to your credit card company. They will work with you as well. So those are the things that you have. You can talk to a lot of organizations also are helping in terms of the food. Jesus House DC have done a lot in that area in that regards as well, that we've had helped a lot of our members with regards to that. What I'm trying to say is that, what do you have? Look back. You have friends, support group, you have organization, you have a setting like this that that government has set aside. And also, they have the unemployment also. If you qualify, you can file for unemployment. It's not a crime in doing that. At least it will help to augment your financial situation until things pick up. So those are the kind of things that I believe are in place in this kind of society that we can benefit from. If as a business owner, the SBA loan is there for you to apply. You can talk to your creditors to defer the payment, whereby you use the resources that you have now to help keep the light on, the water going, and the food going, which is at the basic priority. And as time goes on, I trust God that things will change for better. So those are the little tips that I believe I can come to people with.
Thank you very much, Dr. Well, you are a doctor, Dr. Ogujigbe. Thank you, Pastor Dr. Ogujigbe, for that input. I know that we also have a lot of young mothers who are watching us even at this time. And I know that part of their concerns and part of their questions basically has been dealing with their young children, even as they embark on this virtual learning, and also trying to balance their working from home for some of them with their children being in school virtually. So let me ask Mrs. Fasherson to very quickly just answer that and tell us how, give us a couple of tips, maybe how these young parents or even older parents that are not used to having their children in the house in the daytime, how they can balance this with safely. Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the main things is to create, as much as possible, there might be space restrictions, but to create a space for them, a place where there can be a table and a chair. It could be on the dining table, it could be another table. That helps. So there's a set place that a lot of times the kids want to lay in bed and do school. No, make them sit up. Just the getting up. I make mine take a bath every morning. We have that fight every morning before school. Just that routine helps them because it puts them in the mind frame of school. Another thing we try to do with them is while they're in class, we take away their phones because there's that tendency to get distracted. So until there's a break, they don't have access to their phones. So just little things like that to help them focus. And yes, we're busy, but let's try, even if it's once a week, to make sure they're keeping up with their work, because it's been so long that they've been without structure. So for a lot of them, they're struggling to get in, but they're dropping the ball every now and then. We don't want it to get to where everything has accumulated and then they now get into panic mode. So let's along the way just check in periodically just to make sure they're keeping abreast, and if they need help, we can reach out to their teachers, ask for more time, whatever will help them along the way, and just, like I said, patience with them.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Fashosi. I appreciate that. I know that we have lots of questions and we continue to have lots of questions coming in. I do want to use this opportunity to please say that if your questions have not been answered thus far, we do have our very own email, which is rafahealth, JHDC, at gmail.com, and you can feel free to please email us. And if you have questions that you choose not to ask even while you're online here, feel free to send us those questions and we will try and answer them for you in the most appropriate manner. I know that one of the questions that was asked that is very important that we also try and answer even before I round up here this afternoon is with regards to our spouses. I believe that the viewer said, especially our men, when you, as the partner, sees that they need some other help or some kind of help that you are unable to give to them, how, in other words, maybe you feel they need to talk to somebody. We're not necessarily saying a psychiatrist, or just talking to somebody by even making the appointment to start with the primary care physician, as Mrs. Fashosi has mentioned previously. How can you assist us, and what will be your tips? And this is a question for either you or Dr. Lucatera. That's Mrs. Fashosi, that is. How would you, how do we go on to getting these men to open up? And I know that this can totally be a different show and can be another event for our next time, which is something that I'm sure that as Rafa Health we will be willing to tackle. But if you can just kind of scrape that surface for us on how some of our women can be assisted in getting this kind of direction. You go, Mrs. Fashosi.
Okay. One of the main things we need to do is we must not be confrontational. So it's not a case of, oh, what's wrong with you? It's not a case of, you need to get help. We need to open dialogue and try and figure out what's going on with them. Another thing is we can reach out to a close friend. We can reach out to family, not your family. Reach out to his family, someone you're close to in his family, and let them know what's going on, and that you just feel a little concerned, and you feel maybe they can talk with him, and if he's not opening up to you, maybe they can talk with him. And if he has a close friend, you know, that's a male, you can also reach out to that person. But I'll say start with his family. He'll feel more comfortable with that. That's if you've talked to him one-on-one and you're not getting such a good response. And if you share primary care, you can also mention it to primary care the next time he comes in. Could you please follow up with him on that? So those are options that are open.
Okay.
So please don't be confrontational.
All right, so ladies, don't be confrontational is what we've learned from that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our viewers and boys and girls, moms and dads, everyone that is logged on today, we definitely do not take it for granted. I am definitely overwhelmed, and we appreciate the fact that even at this time, we still have 98 viewers even hanging on with us on our YouTube site. But before I close this evening, I do have a few, or this morning rather, this afternoon, I do have a few announcements to make. I do want to say, I know that Pastor Lumide Ogunjugbe did touch on it. We do have a program that is being hosted by Jesus House DC, which is through the Brethren Assist and the Grab and Go, and also the Evangelism Ministry, which we do and is open to the public. Anybody that lives in the Maryland area is welcome. And the next one will be going on this Saturday coming up. I believe that is the 26th of September, which you absolutely do not need to get down. You just simply come by and we will give you something to help you even with your new week. It's a grab and go that we have some food supplies for anybody that comes by. You are welcome to walk up as well. So not having a car is not a reason for you not to show up. At the same time, I do want to say that Jesus House DC is 25 years this year. Yes, thank God for that. And we will be having a Thanksgiving service virtually tomorrow. So we are asking everyone and all our viewers that have never joined us on our service, on our Sunday service, to please be a part of the celebration tomorrow. And that is at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that will be at this same hangar, which is at Jesus House DC on the YouTube media. So we look forward to seeing all of you there on tomorrow. I would also like to use this opportunity to say a big thank you to all our speakers this morning. I want to say thank you to Dr. Mercy Lugatera for your input. And I want to say thank you to Mrs. Tony Fashosi. I also want to give a big up to all our panelists, Pastor Dr. Olumide Ogudrigbe, Sister Mokefa Fowora, and Mrs. Latunde Onobajo. And there's some people that have made this morning possible for us by helping us with the technical issues at the back end. We absolutely cannot take these people for granted. Our very own Mr. Bayo Adewale, we thank you for your assistance, always ready to help us. We appreciate you. We also want to say a big thank you to Dickness Rioke Peku for coming in and assisting us. Thank you to Pastor Tunde Ogunbade for even us giving you a call and you showing up to assist us. We appreciate you. We thank you, Sister Falake of Rafa Health, for being our go-between YouTube and our Zoom this morning. We appreciate you. And our very own church counselor, Sister Rosemary Ogbebo, we say thank you so much for your assistance. And also all our members of Rafa Health and Fitness Ministry for your input, even as we collaborated to make this event a success. We want to say thank you to the leadership of Jesus House DC that allowed us to use this platform to be able to encourage one another. We as a department want to say that this is not the end of us. We hope to see, I know that some of our viewers on YouTube had written that we need more of this kind of event. So we want to make a promise that we will try and do something of this nature more often than not. If we have suggestions of topics that you would like to be discussed, feel free to send it to us. Again, our email address is Rafa Health, JHDC, which stands for Jesus House DC, at gmail.com. Again, that's Rafa Health, JHDC, at gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you. We look forward to hearing your feedback, even with regards to this event today. And we look forward to doing this again with you soon. A big thank you to all our viewers. We're still tipping at 100 and we are at 12:36. I know it's a Saturday. Some people want to go grocery shopping. Some people in other parts of the world that have joined us, it's dinner time. What can I say? Again, my name is Toye Olutoye Gansalo. To some people, I am Toy Ganzi MC, and I want to say in the daytime, I am actually a nurse practitioner, and I thank you for all the wealth of knowledge that I have received even this morning. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to our very own head of department, Mrs. Desola Ogushemowo of the Rafa Health and Fitness Ministry. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for assisting us to put this event together. And if I didn't mention your name, it's not because you're not important, it is because you're very important. And once I mention your name, people will want to know how I'm connected to you. And I don't want to deal with that right now. So thank you all so much for joining us. And we look forward to having another event soon. Thank you very much and have a blessed day wherever you are all over the world. Good night, good evening, and good morning.